Bob, can I ask you something personal?
You can try.
Did you ever want to be something other than what you are?
That is an interesting question for a gorilla sitting on a rock in a jungle with a banana microphone.
I know, but seriously.
No, I never wanted to be something else. But I think what is more interesting is that I never felt pressure to be something else either. Nobody handed me a list of appropriate gorilla ambitions. Nobody told me I should have a 5-year plan. I just existed and slowly figured out what that meant.
And most humans don't get that.
Most humans get a list before they're old enough to ask whether they agree with it.
Welcome back to the Primate Podcast, your slow English podcast for real-life conversations. I'm Zara.
I'm Bob, and today's question is one of the most honest and most uncomfortable questions a person can sit with.
Are you living your own dreams or someone else's?
This is a B1 to B2 episode, but this question, honestly, belongs to every level. Don't worry if you don't catch every word. Stay with the feeling. Let the English come to you naturally.
Before we start, comment below. Have you ever made a big life choice, a job, a place, a path, and later realized it was never really yours? Write it if you want. We read everything.
Okay, I want to start with something I've watched many times.
Tell me.
Tourists arrive here. Different ages, different backgrounds, different levels of obvious stress. And the ones who interest me most are not the excited ones. The ones who interest me are the ones who seem slightly lost. Not geographically, just lost.
What do you mean by lost?
Like they arrived at a place they planned to arrive at, and it doesn't feel like what they thought it would. They're here, they did the thing, and something inside is quietly asking, is this it? Was this actually what I wanted? Or did I just want to want this?
Did I just want to want this?
Did I just want to want this? Because sometimes people don't actually want the thing. They want the version of themselves that would have that thing. They want to be the kind of person who is married by this age, who has the senior job by that age, who travels to these places, owns this kind of home, reads these kinds of books.
The identity more than the life itself.
Exactly. And the identity was often built for them. By parents, by culture, by comparison, by the quiet but constant pressure of being seen in a certain way.
And this is where the question gets really important. Because there is a difference, a significant difference, between a dream that came from inside you and a dream that was handed to you so early and so consistently that you eventually mistook it for your own. I want to talk about how this happens. Because I think most people don't choose someone else's dream deliberately.
No, it seeps in.
Yes, it seeps in quietly, through what gets praised and what gets ignored, through what your family talks about with pride and what they go silent about, through what your culture rewards and what it questions.
You learn very early what kind of life gets approved, and once you know, the pressure to live that life doesn't even need to be spoken out loud. It just hangs there, in the room, in the dinner table conversation, in the question, so what are you planning to do?
And you start shaping your choices, often without realizing it, toward the answer that will be received well.
Not the answer that is true, the answer that will keep the room comfortable.
And comfort is seductive. It really is. Because choosing a path that disappoints people you love, even if it is right for you, is genuinely painful. It costs something real.
So people choose the path of least disappointment, which is not the same as the path of most aliveness.
Path of most aliveness. I love that.
And the dangerous thing is, the path of least disappointment can look very successful from the outside. Good job, stable income, respectable life, appropriate partner, the right milestones in roughly the right order.
And inside, a quiet wondering, a feeling like wearing a very nice shirt that doesn't quite fit. It looks right, it just doesn't feel right.
And some people wear that shirt for years.
decades and tell themselves the feeling will go away, that they'll get used to it.
And sometimes they do. And sometimes the feeling grows louder.
Let me tell you about someone. A woman, late 30s. She arrived here on a solo trip, the first time she had ever traveled alone in her life.
First time ever?
She had always traveled with family, with a partner, with friends. And she told me, not me specifically, I was just nearby. She said, I realized that I have never made one major decision in my life that was not made in relation to someone else. Where to live, near my parents. What to study, what my father thought was practical. Who to be with, someone my family understood. And I sat near her while she said this, and the air was very still.
What happened?
She started crying. Not dramatically, just quietly. Like something that had been held very tightly for a very long time was finally being set down for a moment.
Did she seem regretful?
Not exactly. More like newly aware. Like she had been reading a book for years and just noticed for the first time whose name was on the cover. And it wasn't hers.
And I think that story will land for a lot of people. Not because everyone has made every choice for other people, but because most people have made at least some choices, important ones, while asking the wrong question. Not what do I actually want, but what will be accepted. Okay, so how do you tell the difference between a genuine desire and a borrowed one?
This is the hard part.
It is, because borrowed dreams can feel very real, especially once you've been living them for a while.
I think one signal is, what happens when you imagine having the thing? When you imagine reaching the goal? Is the feeling satisfaction, or is it primarily relief?
Say more.
Genuine desire usually produces excitement when you imagine having the thing, a pull toward it, something alive. But borrowed desire often produces something more like relief. Finally, people will stop asking. I can stop being behind. I can stop feeling like I'm failing.
The goal is about stopping a pain, not about gaining something you actually want.
Exactly. And that is a very different engine to run a life on.
Another signal, who is in the room when you imagine achieving it?
What do you mean?
When you imagine the moment you get the job, the degree, the recognition, who are you picturing? Are you picturing yourself feeling something? Or are you picturing the look on other people's faces?
Oof, that one is uncomfortable.
It is. Because if the primary satisfaction in the image is someone else's reaction, a parent, a peer, an imaginary audience, that is worth noticing. It doesn't mean the goal is wrong, but it does mean the goal might be doing a different job than it looks like.
It is being used to get something from other people. Approval, pride, recognition, rather than being something you genuinely want for yourself.
And I want to be careful here, because wanting approval is human. There is nothing wrong with wanting the people you love to be proud of you. The question is just, is it the foundation of the whole choice, or is it one feeling among many?
There's another thing I want to say, because I think it is important.
What's that?
Some people hear this question, are you living your own dreams, and immediately feel guilty, like they have been doing it wrong all along, like their life is a mistake.
And that is not the point.
Not at all, because the life you've built, even if some of it was shaped by other people's expectations, is still yours. You still lived it. You still learned from it. It still brought you things that matter.
Yes, and also some of the dreams that were handed to us turn out to actually be ours. You inherit a direction from your family, and then you discover that you genuinely love it. That happens too.
The question is not, was I influenced? Because everyone is influenced. The question is, after all the influence, does this still feel like mine? When the noise of other people's expectations is quiet, is this still what I would choose?
And that question can be terrifying, because sometimes the honest answer is, I'm not sure, or I think so, but I've never really tested it.
Or no. And that answer asks something from you.
It asks for honesty.
and then for courage, and then for patience, because the path back to yourself or forward into yourself is rarely a dramatic moment. It is usually very slow, very quiet, made of small adjustments over a long time.
I want to talk about the cost of living someone else's dream, because I think it is real, and I think people underestimate it.
What do you mean by cost?
Not money, the other kind. The energy it takes to maintain a life that doesn't fit you, to keep performing a version of yourself that is slightly or significantly different from the actual you.
That performance is exhausting, and it becomes the background of everything.
Yes, like a low hum in a room that you stop noticing, but is still using energy. And over time, that energy adds up. It shows up as flatness, as the feeling of going through the motions, as dreading Sunday evenings because Monday is coming, as a vague restlessness that seems to have no specific cause.
I had a season like that once. I was doing well by most external measures, but I had this feeling every morning of putting on a costume before I left the house. Not literally, just the sense that the version of me that was going out into the world was not quite the real one.
And the real one
Was still inside, waiting, being patient, but getting a little tired of waiting.
That is such an honest way to say it.
And I think that is what the restlessness is for a lot of people. Not boredom, not ingratitude, the real self signaling, asking to be let in more fully, asking for its turn.
And when people don't listen to that signal, it doesn't go away. It gets louder, or it goes underground and shows up as resentment or illness or a kind of numbness that spreads slowly over everything.
And I think this is worth saying clearly. The restlessness is not the enemy. The restlessness is the message, and the message is worth reading, even when reading it is uncomfortable, even when what it says is inconvenient. Okay, so what do people actually do with this? Because knowing the question is one thing, but most people can't quit their life and start over.
And they shouldn't have to.
Right. Because sometimes this conversation makes people feel like the answer is a dramatic change. Leave the job, leave the city, reinvent everything.
But for most people, and I think this is actually more honest, the work is much smaller and much more internal. It is not about blowing up the life you have. It is about slowly, very slowly, bringing more of yourself into it.
What does that look like?
It looks like noticing what genuinely interests you, not what you think should interest you, and then giving that thing a small amount of space, even just an hour a week.
It looks like making one decision, even a small one, based entirely on what you want, not what someone else expects, not what looks right, just what feels true.
And noticing how that feels. Because often people are surprised. They expect guilt. And yes, sometimes there is guilt. But underneath the guilt, there is often also something else, something lighter, like the beginning of breath.
And that beginning, that small, private beginning, is not nothing. It is actually where most real change starts. Not in the dramatic moment, in the tiny private one.
I also think, and this is important, that the question doesn't have one answer that you find once and then it's settled. It is a question you live with, and it gives different answers at different times in your life.
Yes, what felt like yours at 22 may feel different at 35. What you needed to borrow from other people in one season, you may be ready to set down in the next.
Life is not a single declaration. It is a long conversation with yourself. And the question, is this mine, is one worth returning to, quietly, honestly, without drama.
And maybe that is what today is really about. Not the answer, the willingness to ask, the courage to sit with the question, even when it is uncomfortable, even when you don't like what it shows you. Because a life examined, even imperfectly, is still more yours than one that was never questioned at all.
Okay, word tour.
Let's go. Everyone, repeat out loud.
Ready, let's go.
1.
Authentic. Authentic. Genuinely and truly yourself. Not performing, not pretending, not shaped by what others expect. She finally felt authentic when she stopped trying to match everyone else's idea of success. An authentic choice is one that comes from inside you, not from the pressure around you. Repeat. Authentic. Authentic. 2. Conditioned. Conditioned. Trained over time to think or feel a certain way, shaped by repeated messages, even subtle ones. He was conditioned from childhood to believe that rest was laziness. Once you realize you are conditioned, you can start asking whether you actually agree. Repeat. Conditioned. Conditioned. 3. Restless. Restless. Feeling a quiet but persistent sense that something is not right, an inner signal that something needs to change. She didn't know why she felt restless, only that the feeling kept returning. Restlessness is not ingratitude. Sometimes it is just the real self, asking to be let in. Repeat. Restless. Restless.
4. Conform. Conform. To behave in a way that matches what others expect, to fit into an existing shape rather than create your own. He conformed to what his family wanted without ever asking whether he agreed. Conforming can feel safe, but it carries its own quiet cost over time. Repeat. Conform. Conform.
5. Alignment. ALIGNMENT. The feeling of being in harmony with yourself when your outer life matches your inner values and desires. She changed careers and finally felt a sense of real alignment. Alignment is not perfection. It is the feeling that what you are doing is genuinely connected to who you are. Repeat. Alignment. Alignment.
6. Drift. Drift. To move slowly in a direction without consciously choosing it, to let current or habit decide instead of intention. He drifted into a career that looked right but never felt chosen. A lot of people don't choose the wrong life, they simply drift into it, one small compromise at a time. Repeat. Drift. Drift.
7. Approval. Approve-o. The positive reaction or acceptance of others, wanting to be seen as doing well in someone else's eyes. She made the decision hoping for her parents' approval and never asked herself what she actually wanted. Wanting approval is human. The question is whether it is driving the whole choice. Repeat. Approval. Approval. 8. Ingrained. Ingrained. So deeply established over time that it feels like a natural part of you. Hard to see. Hard to question. The belief that he wasn't allowed to want more was so ingrained he had stopped noticing it. Ingrained patterns are the hardest to change, not because they are strong, but because they feel like the truth. Repeat. Ingrained. Ingrained. 9. Reclaim. Reclaim. To take back something that was yours, to return to a part of yourself that was set aside or forgotten. She began to reclaim the interests she had abandoned when life got busy and serious. Reclaiming yourself is rarely dramatic. It usually begins with one small private choice. Repeat. Reclaim. Reclaim.
10. Aliveness. Aliveness. The quality of feeling genuinely present, engaged, and connected to what you are doing, the opposite of just going through the motions. He noticed that some activities brought a real sense of aliveness, and others simply didn't. Aliveness is not happiness exactly. It is the feeling that what you are doing actually matters to you. Repeat. Aliveness. Aliveness.
11. Inherited. In-he-re-ted. Received from someone else, not created by you, but passed on through family, culture, or environment. A lot of people discover in their 30s that some of their most important values were inherited, not chosen. Inherited doesn't mean wrong, but it is worth asking, if I chose this today, would I still choose it? Repeat, inherited. Inherited.
12. Integrity. In-teg-ri-ty. The quality of being honest and consistent with your own values, acting in ways that match what you actually believe. Making choices from integrity sometimes disappoints people, but it rarely disappoints you. Integrity is not about being perfect, it is about being honest, with yourself first. Repeat. Integrity. In-teg-ri-ty. 13. Permission. Per-mi-shen. The sense of being allowed to do something, often the thing people most need to give themselves, not wait to receive from others. She was waiting for someone to tell her it was okay. What she needed was to give herself permission. Permission to change. Permission to want something different. Permission to be honest about what is actually true. Repeat. Permission. Per-mi-shen. Permission.
All about the quiet work of living a life that is genuinely yours. Repeat them tonight, and then ask yourself one honest question. Just one. In your own language, in your own mind, quietly. Is there something in my life right now that I am doing for me, and something I am doing because I don't yet have the courage not to?
Episode 13. Done.
We talked about borrowed dreams, how they arrive not as pressure but as advice, how they seep in through what gets praised and what gets ignored, how they can look like success from the outside and feel like a costume from the inside.
And we talked about the small way back, not the dramatic one, the quiet one, the one made of tiny private choices that slowly bring more of yourself into your own life.
Comment below, have you ever made a big choice that was really someone else's dream? And if you have started to find your own direction, what was the first small step?
We want to read it.
Subscribe to the Primate podcast. New episodes every 2 days. From the studio, I'm Zara.
I'm Bob. Don't be a parrot. Parrots repeat. Primates understand.